plants do have feelings and stuff too.
Yeah. What do you think that plants feel?
Pain too, if like you were able to like cut the stems and stuff.
So do you think that with that being said, morally speaking, cutting a stem or cutting the stalk of a broccoli or something is comparable to, cutting the throat of a pig or a cow? Is that morally the same, or is there a difference?
I think it's morally the same.
Hey everyone, just before we get into the debate, I want to tell you about the partner of today's video, which is Complement, and their incredible range of different vegan products. In particular, I want to highlight Complement Essential, which is a science-backed multivitamin specifically catered to optimize a plant-based diet. This means that it's packed with essential nutrients like B12, D3, DHA and EPA, and more. And by taking Complement Essential, you can look after your own health while also protecting animals and the planet at the same time. But as well as the multivitamin, Complement has a wide range of other products, including a supplement specifically designed for women, which goes alongside Complement Essential. They also have creatine, they have protein powders, they have a greens powder, and they also have a gut nurturing powder. Their products are also third-party tested, and their packaging is biodegradable, meaning that once you finish with it, you can simply compost the packaging as well. Complement also donates a plant-based meal to a child in need with every purchase, and they also offer a 100-day money-back guarantee. Plus, it gets even better because if you use the code ED15, you can get 15% off of their products for yourself. So, to find out more about Complement and to get 15% off of their products, make sure to click the link in my description and use the code ED15. A huge thank you to Complement for partnering with me on today's video. And now let's get back to the debate at hand.
Hi Raphael, it's a pleasure to meet you. My name is Ed. Today I'm at UCLA with a banner that says, "Give me your best argument for not being vegan." You very kindly sat down, and so I'm interested, what is your response to that banner?
So when you say like best argument for not being vegan, you're saying like everyone should be vegan?
Well, I appreciate that not everyone in the world can be vegan, but my strong suspicion is that the vast majority of people who sit down to speak with me can be. So it's more about your personal response to that, like why you're not vegan.
Okay, so personally, I lift, so like workout and stuff.
Yeah.
And when it comes to protein, it's a lot easier to get protein from meat than vegan proteins because they just don't contain as much protein.
Right. Can you get protein from a plant-based diet?
Yeah.
And when you say that you lift, how much protein are you looking to get each day?
About 1.2 grams per body weight.
Sure. And so when we think about like, dense protein sources, obviously we think of things like steak, chicken maybe comes to mind, a lot of animal products. But actually when you look at plant-based products as well, they're filled with protein. You can get protein like tofu, tempeh, legumes, whole grains, chickpeas, those kinds of foods are also good sources of protein. So you can definitely get enough protein on a plant-based diet even if you lift. It's just sometimes about, doing a little bit of research to see, which protein sources you should rely on and where you should get the protein that you need. So it just takes a little bit of time to research that. But do you think it would be possible?
I definitely think it is a consideration to take.
Yeah.
But usually plant-based proteins and other plant-based products are more expensive than like actual meat.
Can vary, can't it? You're not wrong in the sense of there are definitely some that are more expensive. You go into a Whole Foods and you buy like Impossible Burgers, or Beyond Meat burgers, that's going to cost more than going to Smart and Final or something and buying chicken breast. That can be the case, absolutely. But you can also eat vegan on a budget, and a lot of like the healthiest foods are also the most inexpensive foods. I'm thinking like whole grains, legumes, beans, chickpeas, that kind of thing. So you can be a vegan who spends a lot of money, undeniably, but you can also be a vegan who lives on a budget. And also a lot of those budget foods just tend to be the healthiest foods because we're talking about whole plant foods as well.
Yeah, I guess for me, like, like the same argument, like if I am trying to bulk and stuff and I need to eat a lot of calories and stuff, like you probably won't make progress toward your goals. It's not like it will take more time. Like you'll probably just not make any progress at all.
So people on plant-based diets who eat whole foods rather than substitutes are unable to...
Oh, that's not true.
Okay, okay.
It's just, I think it's just a lot harder for like me specifically.
But even if that is the case, I'm going to take it on face value and say it's harder for you. Even if that is the case, do you think that it's right that others should suffer to make that transition to the body you want easier?
Well, when I think of like, when you say others, like my first thought goes to like actual people.
Yeah, humans, right?
But I don't know. I think animals is just.
Do they suffer?
Of course they suffer, yeah. And I think I just don't like. I don't really care as much that they suffer.
Yeah.
Because I'm not seeing it firsthand. I'm not there, so I don't know what's actually going on.
No.
And although I've seen like videos where they're like actually butchered and killed and all that, that's still like through the screen. I haven't like it's. I think it'd probably have a more drastic effect if I saw it in person.
Probably.
Yeah.
I think that always is the case. But also, I suppose humans, one of the things that was good is that we have the ability to intellectually understand something as well. And so, whilst we may never have never seen a cow or a pig or any animal being butchered in front of us, we still logically know that what happens to these animals causes them suffering and obviously takes their life from them. So, whilst we may not be able to emotionally connect in the way that we would be if it was happening in front of us, intellectually, that recognition, we still have that recognition that their suffering exists. So do you acknowledge that when you buy these animal products, that is the reality of what you're supporting?
Yeah, but isn't there also like statistics behind like meat that goes to waste? So like wouldn't like me consuming meat help like the waste going away?
Well, the thing is, when we buy these products, like we are demanding that more be supplied. And so by buying them, we're not reducing food waste because we're incentivizing that those products be replaced. Now, if everyone stopped buying them over a period of time, they would stop being produced, obviously. So, and for every time you buy, a piece of steak, you can make the argument that by not buying the block of tofu or the tin of chickpeas, you're saying that food should go to waste. We always prioritize some food over another type of food because we cannot only ever eat so much, right? So by doing that, we could fall into the same trap of saying, well, that food will go to waste. So I would say just buy the plant-based foods instead, and then hopefully over time, if enough people do it, the animal-based foods would stop being produced in the first place, and then none of it would go to waste because it won't be produced. That's what I would think anyway.
I think, would you say like any plants or anything have life? Like they get hurt, they feel pain?
I think that they're alive. I mean, undeniably they're alive, but I don't think they have the capacity to have a subjective conscious experience, an awareness of what is happening to them, if you like.
Why do you think that?
Well, I mean, you've got to think about the capacity to experience for a couple of reasons. First, there's kind of like a biological function that creates that capacity, but also there's kind of like an evolutionary purpose behind that capacity. For humans, we feel pain because we have brain, central nervous system. So when something happens, our nerves send signals to our brains, then we feel pain. Animals have that, the animals who we kill at least have that same kind of basic structure, a heart, a brain, a central nervous system, the capacity for signals to be sent from an area where the pain has been suffered to the brain, so they recognize that. And then also there's the evolutionary purpose behind it. We feel pain so we can evade danger, so we can learn to avoid certain things. We learn that fire is hot, causes pain, so we don't put our hand in the fire. Yeah. But if, a human, and this is true, humans who aren't born with the ability to feel pain have lower life expectancies because they're more likely to take risks, less likely to look after themselves in the same way that you would because of the fear of pain that we would have. Yeah. And so actually it says very important evolutionary purpose, which is the preservation of life. But for the plants here being dried out by the sun, for example, there's no preservation of life that can be felt through what would presumably be excruciating pain of being dried out by the sun. So, and they also don't have the biological functions either, really, that we would think of as creating that sensation.
Yeah. So, like you're saying, plants don't have like feelings; they can't like feel pain and all that.
Yeah. Not subjective experiences.
And you were saying that because like through evolution they haven't
so much purpose, in the same way that for us it has that evolutionary purpose, and also it's like a biological thing. They don't have brains, they don't have the capacity to what we would perceive as being the capacity to have subjective experiences seems somewhat lacking in that of a cucumber or a kale or whatever it might be.
There's also plants that like have gone through evolutionary phases that give them like an advantage to survive, like cactus. They grow needles, so that I would say is a response in like it's trying to survive. Yeah. And like it's trying to defend itself. So I would argue that like plants do have feelings and stuff too.
Yeah. What do you think that plants feel?
Pain too, if like you were able to like cut the stems and stuff.
So do you think that with that being said, morally speaking, cutting a stem or cutting the stalk of a broccoli or something is comparable to, cutting the throat of a pig or a cow? Is that morally the same, or is there a difference?
I think it's morally the same because you got to take... Okay, so like I think it's more morally acceptable to kill like cows and chickens than compared to animals that don't really make noises when they're killed. Like I've seen a couple videos of like crabs being killed, and usually people are more like open to that because there's no like like auditory like pain. Maybe you can see like a little bit of visual pain because they're like moving around, but for plants, I would say that's like the same thing. There's no like auditory or visual pain, but there's probably still some type of pain.
Yeah. And how have you come to that conclusion?
Just through evolution. If a plant wants to survive, so like this want to survive is shown through its adaptations and evolution. Like I brought the example of a cactus, so like bringing out spikes. So like why would it bring out spikes if it didn't have like pain receptors and like a motive to survive?
Well, think within our body. So obviously we are sentient individuals, but within our body we have a very complex system of, cells, and certain cells, we have like white blood cells, we have T cells, we release antibodies, and these cells fight to protect themselves and fight to protect us, and they will attack other cells, attack parasites, invaders, bacterial infections. They do that, and they have certain ways of doing that, certain defense systems, certain attacking systems. But we wouldn't say that just because they have those systems or that structure there, that in and of itself means that our cells have the capacity to experience pain. I mean, we certainly hope they don't, considering the amount of carnage that happens in our bodies every day. So I guess it's more about thinking about the biological functions that create that experience, and ultimately the purpose behind that experience and what it means. But to bring it back to what you were saying about there not being morally a difference, I just want to clarify that's what you said, that there isn't morally a difference between harming a pig and harming a plant.
Yeah.
That's the same. Yeah. So do you think that we shouldn't have animal welfare laws then?
Can you state some of the animal welfare laws?
Yeah. So, for example, if a dog was walking past us now, and one of the people here was to attack that dog, kick them, punch them, that would be illegal. That would be classified as animal cruelty. Yeah. Do you think that should be illegal, or do you think that should be acceptable?
They're just kicking the dog for like no purpose.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's illegal.
And so would you say then that's morally, like if that should be illegal, should mowing the lawn or cutting the grass, should that also be illegal if morally there's no difference between harming an animal or harming a plant?
I think mowing a lawn has more purpose than kicking a dog. Kicking a dog, you're just kicking a dog to kick a dog.
What's the purpose of mowing the lawn?
So it doesn't look like, so it's cleaner, your yard's cleaner.
Okay, but do you think that cleanliness of a yard is a good enough justification to cause so much harm?
I think let's see. Yeah, just because I don't think, I can't see them, I can't hear them feel pain. Yeah. I'm just gonna do it.
Sure, exactly. But that might be true, but morally, or I guess legally, if it's illegal to do this to a dog, and morally harming an animal is the same as harming a plant, then surely it should be illegal to mow the lawn because that's causing harm to the plants, right?
Yeah, but like illegally doesn't mean like morally right or not. So,
no, certainly not.
Like although it's illegal to like kick a dog and stuff, and it wouldn't be illegal to to mow your lawn.
Yeah.
I think it's just because humans are more they wouldn't really care if you can't like hear or like see the pain.
Yeah. Do you think it should be illegal to mow the lawn then?
I think it's I don't know. It's up to the like general population.
Well, what do you think?
Illegal to cut the lawn? No.
But why?
You can't see the pain, you can't hear the pain.
But you think it exists?
Yeah.
So just because we can't see it doesn't mean it is not relevant then if you think it exists?
Well, like I'm definitely like, let's say plants actually do have feelings and all that and feel pain. I wouldn't really care.
No,
I would not care.
No, okay. So with that in mind, though, why do you care about the dog? Like, why would that be? Or do you think that should be legal?
Because I think we get, as humans, we get more of an emotional response because, like, we've attributed emotions to dogs and stuff.
Yes. But do you think they do have emotions?
Dogs?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But just before we move past that point, just if you don't care about plants feeling pain, you don't care about that. and you think that morally harming plants is the same as harming a dog, then while some people may have different feelings about dogs, I'm interested in what you think. So with that in mind, do you think that it should be legal to beat a dog or to harm a dog? Do you think that should be something that's acceptable if you don't really care about plants, but morally it's the same?
Can you ask that question again?
I'll reword it. We're talking about plants and animals, obviously, and your position is that morally it's the same. Cutting the lawn is morally the same as cutting a pig's throat, morally the same as beating a dog, because morally it's all the same to cause harm to these different species. You kind of said it shouldn't be illegal to mow the lawn. That isn't something that should be illegal. But when we spoke about harming the dog, you said it should be illegal. And I'm wondering why you think that should be illegal, but mowing the lawn should be okay and continue to be legal. If morally it's the same and you don't care, why do you think it should be illegal then?
Morally the same.
Why do you think? Fundamentally, why do you think that beating a dog should be considered illegal?
It's just, I don't know, like what I said, like a human's emotional response to dogs.
Why do you think that? Because you're not blinded by that. You understand that it's different with plants, or the same with plants. So outside of what other people think, I'm more interested in what you think. Yeah.
Well, why I consider one to be legal, one not. If
why do you think one should
morally
be
the same?
Yeah.
Just because I can't hear it, I can't, like the same argument, I just can't hear it, see it. Yeah.
But that point aside, you believe that it exists. So let's take it from me, right? I can't hear a fish scream. Okay, that doesn't exist in my reality. I can't hear that. But I don't think that means that morally killing a fish is preferable. I think that killing a fish, killing a tuna fish and killing a chicken are very similar actions, even though a chicken can express themselves in a way. So I can see beyond that, and I'm thinking with yourself, whilst you may not hear what the grass is going through, if you believe that it exists, then why is it that you have that kind of contradictory attitude between what should be legal and illegal? Why is it that harming the dog should be illegal? Or potentially maybe you think it shouldn't be illegal and people should be able to harm dogs and not face any repercussions as a consequence?
I think you just have to take, because we still need plants and stuff for this bench and stuff. We still want that.
Yeah.
And I think it's just not for me. I just don't see it as much of a problem than hurting a dog.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I agree. I also don't see it as much as a problem, which is what leads me to veganism, because I don't think that harming plants is as much of a problem as harming animals. And even that point aside, more plants are used in the production of animal products than plant products, because obviously animals consume plants, right? So when you think about the amount of plants going into an animal versus the amount of meat we get out, there's a considerably higher volume of plants going in than meat coming out. So actually we can reduce the amount of plants being consumed by being vegan, because we're cutting out the middleman, if you like, and making it more efficient. So even if we did believe that plants were morally the same as non-human animals, I would still then make the argument that veganism is preferable, because overall it doesn't just eliminate the animals, but it also greatly reduces plants being used as well in the production of food. So with that, does that sound reasonable, fair?
You're saying if we ate just plants, the animals wouldn't have to die.
Yeah.
And it'd just be the plants were.
Yeah, but also less plants would be consumed overall, because you think about how much a cow or a pig or even a chicken, to get the meat out at the end, the volume of plants going into the animal versus what we get out at the end is not proportionate, obviously, right? Because So overall, even if we believe that morally plants and animals are the same, that would still lead us to the vegan conclusion, because less plants are also being harmed overall. Does that make sense?
Yes. Let's see. Yeah, I would just go back to when it comes to bodybuilding.
Yeah.
I just find it a lot harder to either gain weight on a vegan diet or get as much protein. So I think although it would take more plants to get into a cow,
yeah.
I prefer to eat that because it's easier for me.
Yeah.
And I guess I just don't value the moral implications as much as I do for the convenience of me eating the protein and calories. Yeah.
So I understand how you've got there. So from your perspective then, your convenience is worth more than the harm caused to animals and plants.
Yes. Yes.
Have you ever tried doing it on a plant-based diet?
No, my girlfriend, she's vegan.
Oh, no way, really?
Yeah, but I don't know if I made her vegetarian, but she's vegetarian now.
Oh no.
Yeah.
And how did you do that?
We just went out and ate a lot. I don't think I influenced them that much. I think she also started getting into weightlifting, and then she saw like it'd be easier to eat eggs and stuff,
Yeah.
and that's what she go to.
So it's a similar story of, I guess, valuing convenience and potential ease over the lives of others. Let's say there was another thing, because I guess with this, it's interesting to kind of like see how far this logic goes. Is there anything that it would be wrong to do to an animal for your convenience and ease? Let's take out of the equation what we do to animals right now, and let's say that to make your bodybuilding easier, this is like theoretical, you could have sex with an animal, and that would make it easier and more convenient. Would you do that as well?
For bodybuilding?
Yeah.
Having sex with an animal?
And let's just say theoretically it released a hormone that allowed you to build muscles easier or quicker. Would you then do that to also make it easier and more convenient?
No, I would not do that.
Why not?
I wouldn't want to have a sex with an animal.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Why not?
That's not appealing.
No?
No, it's not appealing.
It's not appealing. Yeah. Would there be a reason for the animal that you wouldn't do that, or is it strictly just because you don't find it appealing?
Is there a reason for the animal?
Yeah, like is it immoral to do that to an animal, to tie them down and have sex with them? Would that be immoral?
Like whipping them?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Why?
Because to an animal, like for me, like if you're gonna like whip an animal, they're definitely like gonna feel pain or something.
Yeah.
So I think that pain just makes it a lot harder to do that, and I'm like, yeah, that's yeah.
I agree. I also think it's immoral. But if it's immoral to rape an animal, why is it not immoral to unnecessarily kill them?
Well, again, I'm not seeing them. I'm not hearing their pain.
But it exists.
Yeah, but like I think maybe if I were exposed to all that stuff, I'd have more consideration in like in my diet and stuff. But in terms of convenience, I'd rather not see that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Of course, you'd rather not. Yeah. Who wouldn't rather not see terrible things, right? So, it's much easier to turn a blind eye to things when we're not given a reason to confront them. But I suppose the acknowledgement should still exist, at least, that even if we turn a blind eye to something, it doesn't mean it doesn't exist. I mean, people can turn a blind eye to our suffering when we're suffering. People can turn a blind eye to anything. We can turn a blind eye to all of the horrible things that happen in the world, but that doesn't mean that they no longer exist. So do you think it's a good idea to turn a blind eye to the suffering of others?
Others in terms of humans, or
both humans and animals?
I think humans are mostly concerned with humans' survival. So I wouldn't turn a blind eye to humans because as a species we're trying to survive.
Yeah. But obviously you acknowledging the suffering of someone else in the world doesn't mean that you survive longer, or it doesn't mean that our species survives longer. So actually, in terms of survival, the reason we don't turn a blind eye isn't because of human survival. It's probably because of something a little bit more, wholesome perhaps. Empathy. Would you agree with that?
Empathy?
Is that the reason we don't? Because I would say that when we see someone suffering, our first thought isn't, we need to preserve the longevity of our species. Our first thought is, I can empathize that individual is suffering, and that's why I shouldn't turn a blind eye.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Yeah. And I just think it's the same with non-human animals. We can empathize with them, sure. It's harder to empathize with them because they're not like us. They don't vocalize in the way that we do. They don't act like we do. So it's harder to empathize with them. But we can empathize with them nonetheless. We can still understand their experience. We can still resonate what it is they're enduring. And so in the same way with a human, look, we obviously value our own species, and probably would value our own species above that of other animals in a situation of necessity. But the reason we see a human suffering, and want to intervene or help them is because we can empathize with them. I think it's the same with animals. We can turn a blind eye, of course, but that doesn't alleviate their suffering when we can empathize with it and fundamentally, reduce it and stop it in many cases as well.
I guess like I still like empathize to a certain degree with like plants and like animals getting killed, but it's not to the extent that I'd want to do something about it.
Not to the extent. So thanks so much, Hudson. We'll wrap up in just a minute then, because I know you've been here a little while, and I appreciate that. So you empathise with them, but not enough to not kill them. So how far does your empathy go for them then?
For animals and like plants. Okay. I guess if like I had like cows and stuff, and like I saw they're getting killed and stuff, I'd empathize to the point of trying to prevent them from being killed.
Yeah. Well, what's the difference? Because obviously when we're talking about the killing, what's relevant is the experience of the individual who's been killed. Whether or not we form some type of connection with the animal doesn't change the fact that even without that connection, the experience that the animal's going through is exactly the same. So if we would try and stop it when we have some form of connection with the animal, shouldn't we try and stop it even if we don't have that connection? Because morally, it's the same. The only difference is whether or not we have a connection, but an animal's worth of life is above that of just the connection that we personally have with them. So shouldn't we try and stop it anyway?
I mean, it'd be nice, like, ideally, to stop it. But, like, you have to have, like, enough people to care that much to stop it. And I guess, like, the general population probably wouldn't, because they don't see this, like, firsthand.
Yeah, I mean, you kind of hit the nail on the head in a way, haven't you? It's the struggle that, obviously myself and other people who are vegan have is getting people to care about it, and it's not like you have to care, with all of your life and all of your energy. You just have to care enough to not buy the things that cause this unnecessary harm. And it's just about getting people to care that much. But fundamentally, I think that people do already care. I think they care in the ways that are important. It's just, as you say, because it's out of sight and out of mind, because we're raised in an environment where it's normalized so much, we don't ever really question it. But I think fundamentally most people do have the values that mean that veganism becomes that logical extension. And I guess what I mean by that is, we've already determined that there are some things that it's wrong to do to an animal, them, for example, or just needlessly beat them on the street. And part of the reason why, and I think, or maybe wholly the reason why we have realized that that's immoral, is because it causes suffering to that animal. Kind of a needless suffering, something that doesn't have to exist. We're doing something for our own selfish benefit, maybe enjoyment or pleasure, but at the consequence of someone else, the animal's suffering, right? So we already recognize that the reduction of animal suffering in situations where it's possible is preferable. And veganism is just that extension. It's just saying, well, hang on a minute, what we do for food is also not something we need to do. We don't have to do these things. We're doing it for a selfish reason, for a personal benefit that we don't have to. And so if it's wrong to an animal for a selfish reason, then it's wrong to kill them and eat them for a selfish reason as well. And if we think that reducing animal suffering is preferable, then the best way we can reduce animal suffering is by simply not paying for them to be bred into an existence that causes them suffering and harm and then prematurely takes their life. Does that make sense?
Yes.
What do you think about that?
I guess, like, I don't know, we kind of are selfish as, like, humans. Like, I personally am. I would prefer, like, to eat a cow or something.
Yeah.
And it's just...
Do you think, I mean, obviously we do a lot of selfish things, that's just, part of, I suppose, having this ego that we have, a drive for self-fulfillment. But I guess with what you're saying is it's almost like an appeal to futility. And what I mean by that is, obviously we're never going to live in a perfect world. And obviously humans are deeply flawed, and we're never going to be these perfect beings who never set a foot wrong and do no harm. That's never going to happen. But at the same time, isn't it, or at least I believe that it should be our goal to try and get to that point as close as possible. Whilst perfection doesn't exist, and whilst a truly, purely moral life will never exist, because that's the foundations of life, right? That doesn't mean that we shouldn't strive to try and get there as close as possible. And so if we can reduce suffering and harm in a very practical way, I think morally we should pursue that, because even though the world will never be perfect, it doesn't mean we shouldn't try to make it better.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Yeah. And do you agree that a world that reduces animal harm is better than a world that turns a blind eye to animal harm?
Ideally, yeah, if it doesn't, like, because that's going to cause, like, other consequences. But like ideally, yeah.
Ideally,
Yeah.
yeah. Okay, well, I mean, we've had a great conversation. I've kept you for quite a while, so I don't want to keep you all day. I know that you've got important work to do for your life and career, so I really appreciate you stopping in and chatting with me, Raphael. Thank you so much for your time and for your humility and your answers. I guess the final question would be, would you be interested in going home, having a look into some protein sources, having a look at maybe some vegan athletes, vegan bodybuilders, having a look at people who actually live in a way that is much in alignment with the way that you're living currently, but doing so on a plant-based diet? Would that be something you'd be interested in? And then if you realize that you could do that and you could eat a plant-based diet and still achieve your body goals, and it really wouldn't be much of a sacrifice at all, would it be something you would be tempted into doing?
Yeah, if there wasn't like, I'd have to like research definitely.
Oh, please do. That's always the most important thing, isn't it?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you so much, Raphael.
Thank you.
I appreciate your time and your energy.